Attention! The case you are about to hear was concealed for decades. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is at this exact moment, because this story began at exactly the same time. In the winter of 1947, in a forgotten corner of rural Pennsylvania, something happened that would never be officially recorded. A wooden chapel, built in 1893, stood alone on a hillside surrounded by bare trees. Inside that chapel, on the night of December 20th, a group of believers gathered for what they called the opening. What they did that night would remain hidden for over 30 years, and when the truth finally surfaced, nobody wanted to believe it. The town was called Ashford Mills, population 312. Most families had lived there for generations. They worked the lumber mills, attended Sunday service, and kept to themselves. But in 1946, something changed. A traveling preacher arrived. His name was Ezekiel Harrow. Harrow was not like other ministers. He was tall, gaunt, with eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. He spoke of visions, of angels appearing in flames, of a gateway that could be opened through absolute faith and sacrifice. At first, the townsfolk dismissed him, but then people started listening. It began with Hannah Pritchard. She was 32 years old, a widow. Her husband had died in the war 2 years earlier. She attended one of Harrow's sermons in the basement of the old general store. According to her diary, which was discovered in 1978, Harrow told her something that changed everything. He said her husband was waiting, not in heaven, but in a place between, and with the right offering, she could speak to him again. Within weeks, 12 others joined her. They met in secret, always after dark. Always in the chapel on the hill, the town noticed the lights burning late into the night. Some heard singing, others claimed they heard something else, a low, rhythmic chanting that made the air feel heavy, but nobody asked questions. In Ashford Mills, you minded your own business. By November of 1947, the group had grown to 17 members. They called themselves the Faithful. They stopped attending regular Sunday services. They stopped socializing with neighbors. And according to later testimonies, they stopped sleeping normally. Many reported dreams of standing before a door that would not open, a door covered in symbols they could not read. Harrow told them the door was real, that it existed in a place beyond sight, and that it could be opened, but only with the right key. The key, he said, was blood. Not just any blood. It had to be given willingly, offered in faith, and it had to be human. On December 15th, 1947, the group gathered for what Harrow called the preparation. They fasted for 3 days. They wrote letters to family members, sealed them, and left them in a locked box in the chapel. The letters were never meant to be read unless something went wrong. They were opened in 1978. Most of them said the same thing. If you are reading this, it means we succeeded. Do not mourn us. We are where we were meant to be. But what did they mean by succeeded? On the night of December 20th, the 17 members of the Faithful arrived at the chapel just after sunset. They brought candles, white robes, and a single silver bowl inscribed with words in Latin. The bowl had been purchased from an estate sale in Philadelphia 3 months earlier. According to the seller's receipt, it once belonged to a monastery dissolved in 1762. The chapel doors were locked from the inside. Heavy curtains covered the windows. A fire burned in the stone hearth at the front of the room, and at the center of the floor, someone had drawn a circle in white chalk. Inside the circle were symbols, stars, eyes, and something that looked like a ladder reaching upward. Harrow stood at the center. The others formed a ring around him, and then the ritual began. According to the only surviving account, a fragmentary journal found in the attic of a farmhouse in 1981, each member took a small blade and made a shallow cut on their left palm. They let the blood drip into the silver bowl, one by one, in silence. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the wind outside. When the bowl was full, Harrow lifted it above his head. He spoke words that were later transcribed, but never translated. The language was unknown. Some scholars believe it was an invented tongue. Others think it was older than anyone could trace. The journal entry ends there. But something else was found with it. A note, unsigned, undated, written in a shaking hand. It said, "We saw the door. It opened." The next morning, a farmer named Thomas Wickham rode past the chapel on his way to town. He noticed the door was ajar. Snow had blown inside. He dismounted and called out. No answer. He stepped inside and found nothing. No people, no candles, no blood, no silver bowl, only the chalk circle on the floor and a smell he could not identify. Sweet, metallic, and something else. Something that made him leave immediately and never speak of it again. He told the local constable that the chapel was empty, that it looked abandoned. The constable filed a report, but nobody investigated further. The families of the faithful did not report them missing because they had all received letters. Letters postmarked December 19th, letters saying goodbye. But here is where it gets strange. The postmaster in Ashford Mills swore he never processed those letters. He kept meticulous records. There was no entry for 17 letters sent on December 19th, yet every family received one. In January of 1948, the chapel was sold to a logging company. It was torn down in March. The land was cleared, and for 30 years, nobody spoke about what happened there. But then, in 1978, a construction crew broke ground for a new housing development on that same hillside. 3 feet below the surface, they found something, a wooden box, sealed with wax. Inside were 17 letters, the same letters the families had received, but these were originals, unread, still sealed. If the families received copies, who sent them? A local historian named Margaret Yost became obsessed with the case. She spent 2 years tracking down descendants of the faithful. Most refused to talk, but one woman, the granddaughter of Hannah Pritchard, agreed to meet. She was 81 years old. She had been 7 when her grandmother disappeared. She remembered one thing clearly. The night before her grandmother left, she came into her room. She kissed her forehead, and she whispered something the girl never forgot. "Do not be afraid when I'm gone. I will be closer than you think. Just look up." The girl asked what she meant. Her grandmother smiled, and then she said something that stayed with her for 70 years. "Heaven is not above us. It is behind a door, and we have found the key." Margaret Yost tried to find more evidence. She searched church records, town archives, and hospital logs. But almost everything from that period had been destroyed in a fire in 1963. The fire started in the basement of the town hall. No cause was ever determined, and curiously, the only records that survived were from 1949 onward. Everything from 1947 was gone. In 1980, a reporter from Pittsburgh heard about the case and decided to investigate. He visited Ashford Mills. He interviewed residents. He even found the silver bowl in an antique shop in Harrisburg. The shopkeeper said it had been donated anonymously in 1948. The reporter sent the bowl to a lab for analysis. Traces of blood were found inside, 17 distinct DNA profiles, but no matches in any database. The blood was human, but it belonged to no one on record. The reporter wrote an article. It was never published. The newspaper said it was too speculative. The reporter died in a car accident 6 months later. His notes were never recovered. Margaret Yost continued her research until her death in 1992. In her final journal entry she wrote, "I believe they succeeded. I believe they opened something, and I believe they went through, but I do not know if they ever came back." In 2003, a hiker found a stone marker in the woods near the site of the old chapel. It was weathered, almost unreadable, but one phrase was still visible, carved in Latin, ad Ianuam Caeli, to the gate of heaven. Nobody knows who placed it there, or when. In 2009, a paranormal research team visited the site. They recorded unusual electromagnetic readings, and at exactly 9:37 in the evening, their equipment registered a sudden drop in temperature, 20 degrees in less than a minute. Then, nothing. One member of the team claimed she heard singing, a low, harmonious chant. She said it sounded like 17 voices, but when they reviewed the audio, there was only silence. The case remains unsolved. No bodies were ever found, no official investigation was ever opened, and the families of the faithful never spoke publicly about what happened. But every year, on December 20th, someone leaves 17 white candles on the hillside where the chapel once stood. They are arranged in a circle, and in the center, a silver bowl. Nobody knows who does this. Nobody has ever been seen. But every year, the candles are there. Some say it is a memorial. Others believe it is a ritual, a way of keeping the door open. In 2015, a college student researching local folklore visited the site. She took photographs. When she developed them, she noticed something strange. In one image, taken at dusk, there appeared to be 17 figures standing in the background, transparent, almost like shadows. She showed the photo to experts. They said it was a double exposure, a trick of the light. But she swears she was alone that day. In 2018, a retired pastor from Ashford Mills gave his only interview about the case. He was 94 years old. He had lived in the town his entire life, and he remembered Ezekiel Harrow. He said Harrow was not a fraud, that he believed what he preached, and that on the night of December 20th, 1947, something did happen. The pastor claimed that the next morning the sky above the chapel had looked different. He could not explain how. It was the same color, the same clouds, but something about it felt open. He said he never went near that hillside again. The last known document related to the case was a letter found in the estate of Margaret Yost after her death. It was addressed to her. Postmarked December 20th, 1992, the day she died. It contained one sentence, written in the same handwriting as the letters from 1947. We are still here, and the door is still open. No return address, no signature, just that single sentence. To this day, the case of the faithful remains one of the most enigmatic disappearances in American history. 17 people vanished without a trace. No evidence of foul play, no signs of struggle, just an empty chapel and a circle drawn in chalk. Some believe they were victims of a cult leader, that Harrow led them to their deaths and disposed of the bodies in a way that was never discovered. Others believe they ran away, started new lives under new names, but there are those who believe something else, that they succeeded, that they opened the door, and that they walked through. If that is true, then the question is not what happened to them. The question is, what did they find on the other side? And if the door is still open, who else might walk through? The hillside remains empty. The housing development was never completed. The land was deemed unsuitable for construction, too unstable, too isolated, and according to some workers, too unsettling. They said the air felt wrong there, heavy, as if something was waiting. In 2022, a documentary crew attempted to film a segment on the site. Their equipment malfunctioned repeatedly. Cameras shut off without explanation. Audio recordings were filled with static. And at exactly 9:37 in the evening, every device stopped working at once. They left, and they never returned. The last known sighting of anything unusual occurred in 2023. A group of teenagers visited the hillside on December 20th. They wanted to see if the stories were true. They brought flashlights and cameras. At 9:37, they heard something. A low hum, like a distant choir. They recorded it on their phones. When they played it back, the sound was gone. But one of them swears she saw something else. She said the air in front of her seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from pavement, and for just a moment she thought she saw a door. She did not go near it. She turned and ran, and she has never gone back. The case of the faithful is still discussed in certain circles: historians, folklorists, paranormal researchers. But no one has ever provided a definitive answer. The truth, if it exists, lies somewhere between faith and fear, between belief and madness, between what we can see and what we choose not to, because some doors once opened can never be closed, and some keys should never be used. The last recorded entry in Margaret Yost's research journal was dated June 12, 1992, 6 months before she died. She wrote, "I have spent 14 years trying to understand what happened in that chapel. I have read every document, interviewed every witness, searched every archive, and I have come to one conclusion. They believed, and belief can open doors that logic cannot explain. I do not know if they found what they were looking for, but I know they found something, and I believe it found them too." The journal ends there. In Ashford Mills today, few people remember the story. The town has changed. Most of the old families are gone. The lumber mills are closed, and the hillside where the chapel once stood is overgrown with trees. But on December 20th every year, someone still leaves 17 white candles, and in the center, a silver bowl. Nobody knows who. Nobody asks, because some stories are better left unfinished, some questions better left unanswered, and some doors better left closed. The last official record of the faithful was a census document from 1946. It listed 17 residents of Ashford Mills under the heading Religious Congregation, their names, their ages, their occupations. But in the 1950 census, all 17 names were gone. No death certificates, no relocation records, no explanation. Just gone, as if they had never existed. And maybe they never did. Or maybe they exist somewhere else now, somewhere beyond doors and keys and blood and faith, somewhere we cannot see, but somewhere they can see us. Because if the door is still open, then maybe they are still watching, still waiting, still singing their low, harmonious chant, in a place between here and there, between earth and heaven, between what is and what could be. The final piece of evidence was discovered in 2024. A storage unit in Philadelphia was auctioned after decades of unpaid rent. Inside, among forgotten furniture and old clothing, was a box, a wooden box, sealed with wax. The same wax used on the box found in 1978. Inside were 17 photographs. Black and white, taken in 1947. They showed the members of the faithful standing in front of the chapel, smiling, dressed in white, holding hands. But there was something wrong with the photographs. Behind the group, in the background, there was a shape, a dark, vertical shape, like a doorway, but it was not part of the chapel. It was standing alone, in the air, as if it had been drawn there, or as if it had always been there. The photographs were examined by experts. No evidence of tampering, no signs of manipulation, just 17 people, standing before a door that should not exist. The photographs were donated to a museum, but they were never displayed. The curator said they made people uncomfortable. Visitors who saw them reported feeling dizzy, nauseous, and some claimed they heard singing, low, harmonious, 17 voices. The photographs remain in storage, sealed, untouched, waiting. Just like the door. The last known statement about the case came from a priest in Harrisburg. In 2024, he was asked about the ritual, about the blood, about the door. He said, "Faith can move mountains, but faith without understanding can open doors we were never meant to open, and once opened, they do not close. They wait, they watch, and they call. Some answer, and some disappear. He would not elaborate. He would not say more. And when pressed, he simply walked away. The case remains open, unsolved, unexplained. 17 people vanished on the night of December 20th, 1947. No bodies, no evidence, no answers. Just a chalk circle, a silver bowl, and a story that refuses to die. Because some stories are not meant to end. They are meant to continue, to grow, to spread, to be told again and again, until someone finally understands, or until someone else decides to open the door.